What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports Morning Show. I am your host, Mangone. I am here with our guy. He does the Showdown content over here at Run Pure Sports. It's Rubio Dimes. We're breaking down some NBA Showdown for you guys. We got $1 million up top. Can't promise that someone's going to win by themselves, but you never know. And who doesn't hate a chop of $1 million, right? I mean, if it's a two-way chop, me and Rubio at the top, I'll take it. I'll sign up for that. Rubio, how about you? Would you sign up for a chop with me at the top of the leaderboards tonight?
Oh, with the chop with you, that would be my biggest dream, man. Going like I think after losing money to you in March, I think the least I can do is at least get a chop with you. I mean, that would be such an honor to fulfill $1 million. You know, last year was $1 million first, and it split to like $500 a piece, maybe 440, I think was the exact number. So anything but that. But I'm all ready for a solo shipper if we can possibly find it tonight.
Yeah, I'd love to find a solo shipper. Another thing I'd like to find is like, I don't want the $400 chop like you talked about. And you actually talked about this pre-show a little bit. And I think this is a good way to start the show off. Obviously, we have a big $1 million up top. And I know people are going to say, I need to find a unique lineup. And like, yes, you can make a unique lineup by putting some 1K captain that's going to DNP. But we need to actually make good lineups as well, correct? And last year, you said that there was a big chop because I believe Cam Johnson was just way too cheap. I don't see us having like a certain player on this slate that's just like the chalk of all chalk, right? Some like 60% guy that like is a must play or 80%. What's your takeaways from last year's showdown and some things that you saw last year doing the content that might give us a little bit of an edge for this slate?
So, like, obviously, you know, last year we had Giannis, and then we had the three, you know, basically the three guys for the Bucks: Giannis, Middleton, Drew, and then you looked at the other side of the ball, it was Paul, Booker, and I guess you could throw Ayton in there, even though it was a little bit hit or miss sometimes in that playoffs. But the biggest thing was that Cam Johnson price attracted so much of a chalk build where you could get a stud in the captain easily. And that is so different than this slate here because we have Steph Curry, who, like, this Boston defense is no joke at all. Like, they have shut down, like, they didn't shut down Giannis completely, but Jimmy struggled a whole lot. KD struggled a whole lot. Could Curry suffer the same fate? So you can make the merit of maybe fading him and getting off that route. And if you do that, like, we have a plethora of mid-range guys who can each vie for their own captain, like captaincy viability in a way. And that, I think this makes the slate completely different than like last year's where we had two teams who, honestly, those were high scoring games, it felt like. And we knew that the Bucks always had Giannis you could captain. And when a guy who could get 70 on every game, it was really tough to fade him in the captain. And we don't have the same this year. I understand Tatum's a great player. Curry's a great player, but both these teams match up pretty well. And I think these mid-range captain builds are going to be more unique than last year. And I think like we said, we were talking about the value, we might have Gary Payton tonight, but other than that, you don't have a ton of like sub 3K guys. So this mid-range build with mid-range captains will definitely be like a different path. And I don't think we see a large shop at all tonight.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it all plays out. Last year, keep in mind, the Bucks were in it. And right, Giannis, Middleton, Drew, they just took up so much usage. And PJ Tucker, I believe, was on the floor, right, for them. And like PJ Tucker soaks up no usage. So like what happens is there's just not as many guys that you can actually play that are really viable. So actually, here's another question for you, Rubio. Do you remember, and you can easily, I can look this up maybe during the show too, if you don't have the answer. Last year, what was the winner? Was it a 5-1, 4-2? You know, I always love to ask that. Was it an underdog, 2-4? What was the winning combo? Do you remember that?
Oh man, I do not remember it off the top of my head. Since I had Cam and I had Giannis, and the Suns won, I would guess 4-2 Suns, but that's just pure guess. If I went back into my photos, I could definitely find it in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, but one thing you can do for sure is you can look back at what that game was and how it played out, and then like think through the scenario of tonight. Like, is it going to be Boston? Are they going to be the ones that are going to be like more 4-2 build heavies? And if they are, let's say it's Boston 4-2 are the builds that are the heaviest. Then if you want to be contrarian, maybe it's going the other way, right? Those are things to think about when kind of building out your showdown teams. If they're, let's say it's a Boston heavy script of 5-1s and 4-2s, when you kind of run your projections, maybe you go the other way. Maybe you build 5-1s, 4-2s of the Warriors. There's just tons of ways to do it. The other thing I really like about this showdown slate, and I think it's going to be really fun, is the usage is not just condensed to one guy, right? It's not condensed to Curry. Yes, if Curry gets hot, he's going to shoot a ton of shots, but the usage can get very spread out. So you can see multiple captains. And because of the Curry's shooting volatility, you can see him as a captain, like just dud completely and get like 30. and absolutely just bury you. So there's a lot of interesting things going on with this slate. Like Tatum's another good example. Tatum is pretty safe overall, and I think he's got a good floor and ceiling, but you could easily see Jaylen Brown be the highest scorer on the Celtics. Al Horford could be the highest scorer on the Celtics. It's not surprising. Even Marcus Smart could be the highest scorer on the Celtics. We've seen Grant Williams do it in a game 7, basically. I don't know if he was for sure the highest scorer, but he put up a pretty big score. So the point I'm getting at is there's just so many options in this mid-tier that it allows you to get a lot of different combinations. Like captain ownership is going to be very spread out. Do you have a read? Let's start here, Rubio. Do you have a read on the captains? Like who's going to be the highest? My thought process is Tatum and Curry will be 1 and 2. I don't know which one's first, which one's second, but those are the 2 highest owned ones. And then from there, maybe it's like Jaylen Brown at number 2, just because those 2 Celtics feel like they're like the most usage is condensed on them. And not everyone wants to play the guessing game with, is it Klay Thompson? Is it Wiggins? Is it Draymond? Is it Jordan Poole that comes off the bench and just shoots lights out? So that's my kind of overall thought process on the top 3 guys. Projections kind of say that as well. What's your thoughts on that?
So I agree with you, Curry and Tatum for sure. And I definitely think those 2 guys are going to be the chalky captains compared to normal. But I don't think you're going to see like Giannis level or Doncic level captaincy where they got up to like 44 or 50% even on some slates.
I think the highest you might see, Rubio, is 20%. And it's on like Tatum. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm going to throw this here for you. Al Horford probably will be pretty chalky at captain. And the reason being, so I've only talked to the slate about, there's about 3-4 people, and like all of them seem to gravitate towards Horford. And we might not. I think Robert Williams might end up playing. You know, I think he is he projected in yet. I haven't looked at the news today at all. But
I know Smart came off the injury report. Yeah. I saw that the other day. He was on it, and then they took him off completely. I can look, and it's probably a good idea to give it a second look. For this show, but Robert Williams, you're right. If he does sit, and even if he's like still banged up, people might gravitate towards Horford. Yeah. So 18 hours ago, Williams got ruled questionable again. And that's when Smart got taken off. So that was an update technically. So we still have Robert Williams as questionable, but I do agree with you what you're saying. And especially at that price too, if you look at the projection, like 11-4, Horford, I think, is going to have a decent projection. I think it's going to be higher than Marcus Smart, who's more expensive, which means you'll see lower ownership on Smart compared to Horford, especially coming off that injury. And, you know, people there are a little hesitant to play Klay Thompson just because he's so dependent on the 3 ball. And now he's going up against a really good defense that has great wing defenders and can keep up with him. So I do think you're correct on your Horford take, gaining a bunch of ownership in general.
And we saw Robert Williams look like a wounded deer out there. Like he literally could not move. And I think that will benefit to Grant Williams. I truly don't think this is Robert Williams is a great player. He's one of the best defenders in basketball, but this series is going to be really difficult for him. And that's where I'm also kind of looking at it to where if he's even banged up a little bit, those minutes could weigh down a little bit, where Horford's even playing as the 5, which, you know, is pretty normal, even Grant Williams in some cases. So I'm not looking at this to be a series for Robert Williams, which just boost like Al Horford's projection in my book here. And we have seen him be mega chalk in every game. It feels, it just feels like whenever Al Horford is out there, he's been getting like 55% ownership, even in some games where you don't even expect it. So that was kind of shocking to me over the last couple series. And he's been living up to the bill. Like he's been playing great ball this playoffs, and he's definitely a key reason why the Celtics have made it this far. Another name I want to throw out, just because we haven't seen him under 7K a lot, Draymond Green. Could he be a viable captain tonight? Could he be a chalk captain tonight? I think the answer is yes. I think people kind of gravitate towards that name brand, like Draymond Green, a stud in the finals, a guy who's going to get you a 5x5 type stat line. And I think 40 could definitely be enough of that tag, and he is more than capable of producing it. And we saw him, I think, in game 6, or was it game 6 against the Grizzlies? Is that they go to 6 with the Grizzlies here, or just 5? 1, 2, 3, 6. Game 6, he was about 1/2 point away from being the optimal captain, but that was the only time he's ever gotten really close in a Warriors series. So I'm kind of cautious there, but I think I'm going to be sticking with, you know, one of those 3 guys that we mentioned, maybe a splash of Draymond. Jaylen Brown for me. I understand you could get ownership, but I think that's really tough. If you're a guy who's going to be trying to fit Tatum and Curry, it does get tougher to fit Brown because, as I mentioned earlier, those, especially in the captain slot, if you're, you know, maybe going like a mid-tier captain, it makes it real tough to do so.
Well, the price is cheaper on Draymond too. Let's keep that in mind. So like, obviously if he was like, you know, 6,800 on that Memphis slate. He maybe could have been on the captain team. I don't know what his price was there, but it does feel like his price has gone down. I definitely like the idea of playing Draymond captain today. I think you can get away with it. And I think it'll be a pretty decently contrarian option. I think people might gravitate towards Wiggins too at that $7,200 price tag. We'll kind of dive into that shortly, but I want to kind of build out the captain player pool with you and kind of like run some stuff and see what we got going on here in SaberSim. Before that, please hit the like, subscribe to the channel, guys. Helps us out a ton. We appreciate it. We got could be Travis in the chat. That is not my burner. He says Rubio dimes on the early showdown show for the Millie Maker. Love to see it. We got I know Troy Coley said he subscribed to the YouTube channel yesterday. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We would really, really appreciate it. We got tons of content coming to you today. We got the Print Factory show on the premium side with JSU and Big T. That NBA show is going to be at 3 p.m. today. It's not going to be right before the game starts. So 3 p.m. Be sure to check that out over here at Run Pure Sports. Sign up now to be able to get all Big T and JSU's takes for this game. We also have the MLB Swing for the Fences show today at 4:45. And then at 6 o'clock, we got the final countdown, breaking down the MLB slate, leading you up to lock, answering all of your final questions. So tons of great stuff that we got over here at Run Pure Sports for you guys. All right, Rubio. So this is what I want to do first. And obviously, you can use whatever projections you want. Here, we're using the SaberSim ones right now. If things change, we'll obviously make adjustments to it. It's still early in the day, so things can change. But I'm just going to run the teams, right? Let's run 150 teams. We're going to make the pool size. We're going to make it pretty large here. That way, it gives us a bunch. We'll run 1,000 teams for the pool size. Or actually, it's a showdown. We can do 500. That's perfectly fine. We're not going to max out the salary completely. We're going to do 150 max with that settings as well. And I just want to run it and see what it kind of does. I'm just curious, what's like one of the first teams that pops up. So we'll run that. After that, I'll run a cash one too, because I think it's good to run the cash ones as well. That way you can kind of see what the cash route is. And I know you'll be on the Showdown playbook. So obviously people want to know what you're doing there. Do you have the Showdown playbook up? And have you looked at what like the cash route is going to be here, Rubio?
So I basically got the players into the playbook for the most part, but I got my fade list pretty much done, and I really teetered on one player in particular, and we can get to that in a minute. But basically, I'm about to put in all this stuff after we do the show, but I love talking out my thoughts, especially with someone else, kind of making sure it flows nicely and making sure that I'm confident in what I'm saying. And so I'll have it up after the show for sure.
Okay, and I had to run it again because in SaberSim, I didn't upload my own projections or anything like that right now. I didn't make any adjustments. So now that I made a small adjustment to a couple ones, we can just see what it does. So the first team up for at least this, and this is not like a cash setting. It's got the Al Horford captain, like you talked about, which that's interesting to see come up. We get him at, let's see how much percentage. I got to scroll over and down because we're zoomed in so you guys can see it a little better. The captain ones are Curry's exposure is 23%, Tatum 22, Horford 20. So those are the top three. Maybe it is going to be Horford over Jaylen Brown as that like third captain option. But you get Horford, Curry, Payton, Jaylen Brown, Tatum, and Poole. Nice little 3-3. Gary Payton's the key, right? Like do you have any word on him at 1.6 K? Is he going to start? Is he going to get full run? Like, what's your kind of thoughts on the Gary Payton news? Because if he looked great in the playoffs earlier, right? I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. If he never dealt with the injury, right? He would probably have played a ton.
Yeah, I think Gary Payton, he is in. So he's on track, available to play. I don't think they take Looney out that starting lineup, though. I just don't. I think that's going to be that main lineup they'd run. Kevon Looney gets a run at the 5. He's been great this playoffs. He was great last series, and then his minutes kind of waned toward the end of the series, which is just fine. But Gary Payton's probably going to be off the bench. But the big news, too, is Andre Iguodala. If he plays, does he get those minutes as well? And Iggy is min price. So I think there's a lot of variables that are still yet to play out. If Gary Payton does start, I definitely see him getting a lot of ownership for a cheap guy. And I think you could leverage the situation by playing a guy like Iguodala over him. But I think he'll play. I think he'll be a pretty chalk value option, but I'm going to keep an eye on Iguodala for sure.
Yeah, I think we have to keep an eye on all that. And the first team, when you run stuff here with just like the cash options, it goes Horford, captain, Tatum, Payton, Curry, Brown, and Draymond. And that's a pretty good setup. So like the thing that I'm noticing, at least with these teams so far, is like, if you look at the Utah, I bet you Gary Payton's on a lot of them. Yeah, he's on the most, right? He's the highest exposed guy of the build set. So maybe the key and we talk about that later on, is getting that like utility value correct. And like, if Gary Payton's going to gain a lot of ownership coming off an injury, maybe there's reasons to fade him, like just full on fade, just gamble with it. And like, hey, we're trying to win $1 million. We're trying to make some big stands. Like if Gary Payton comes in at like 50% owned and the dude doesn't really get a lot of run, or if it's like his first game out there and he's just a little cautious and, it's just the first time back out there with the injury, it could be a decent spot to just fade it. I mean, it's not like Gary Payton is just like this like premier scorer, and he's going to be going up against a really good defense. Now, if the Celtics cover up Curry a bunch and they leave open shots for Gary Payton, then yeah, that's going to be obviously nice for him. I don't know how they're going to defend him. We haven't seen how this series plays out yet. So it's going to be interesting, but after running things on Saber, Gary Payton is definitely popping a ton, and he's going to be a big decision point. Whether you like it or not, we're going to have to talk a lot about him today, right? Right, Rubio?
Yeah, and so funny enough, Underdog literally just tweeted as you were speaking that Gary Payton may not re-enter the scripted rotation Thursday, even if he's cleared to play, which is on track to be available. So I think he'll definitely be available. So that's the thing here. If he's going to get any type of ownership above 15-20%, I think it's an auto fade for me. Not only do I think this mid-tier is so strong that playing a captain in the mid-tier and maybe even picking and choosing who you want to play, Otto Porter is going to be viable at 4K. So you don't need to stoop all the way down to this 1K range. And then you have the leverage of going Iguodala, where if he's active, and I think many people will gravitate to Gary Payton because you just saw his projection there. It got you a ton of him. And Iguodala could be a guy who gets half the ownership, and he's been incredible this entire season when he's played. He's had a great fantasy point per minute, the FPPM. I know people didn't like that when I mentioned on the show a few days ago, but his PPM has been impressive this playoffs, and he always shows up in the finals too. I think if I'm going to stoop into the 1K range, it's probably going to be Iguodala. And I want to make sure I mentioned this too, because you mentioned like getting the value could be key. But I don't think Nemanja Bjelica plays if Otto Porter's in. Kuminga's not going to play. Moody's not going to play. And then you're just kind of left with like 2 or 3 guys. That's it. And I think it's going to be Iguodala over Payton for me.
Yeah, Adam G says in the chat, over under 8.5 real points for Gary Payton. I would take under on 8.5 real points for sure there. Ryan says he's too cheap if he plays. He's way too cheap to pay if he plays. Pass. So I'm assuming you're just saying I thought you were saying you're going to play him. He's too cheap. But the key is if he doesn't play, which like things are going to adjust now, right? Like the thing is, we were just having a conversation about Gary Payton and this news came out. This projection is probably not going to be 13.48 anymore. That is going to move down significantly. And then someone else is going to gain some more ownership. Maybe it's more of the Horford captain builds, because maybe it just helps like with the balance builds more. I don't know. Maybe the guys at the top like Curry and Tatum, maybe they lose a little bit more ownership now because the mid-tier builds make some more sense. I'm not sure. Obviously, it's something as we kind of gain more information and news, as we gain more starting lineups and stuff like that, that's going to change some stuff. Coach quotes coming. If Steve Kerr, and he's a guy who can't be trusted, but if he comes up and he just says, hey, Jordan Poole's going to enter the starting lineup, well, that would just literally just shoot his ownership up completely. Now, I'm not saying that's even going to happen, but the point I'm getting at is everyone reacts to news. It's very important information, and that's why things are going to change. But we got to just talk about how to kind of handle it and how we're going to handle it leading up to lock while you guys are kind of, doing your own stuff. And that way you can kind of figure it out yourself. So, Rubio, let's go back though. And let's kind of build out a captain player pool. So if you were playing, like, let's say someone's playing like the 20 max, you could be playing 150 lineups too, but I know everyone's not playing 150 lineups, but let's say you're just building out a captain player pool, right? It could be 20 max. It could be 150. Who would be your captains on this slate? I think for me, I like the idea of building out some pretty contrarian captain teams with Tatum and Curry. Like if I play Tatum and Curry, I'm going to take some like shots on like some really just off the board 1K guys. Like that's how I would build out my teams. And then I think I'm going to really slam home this mid-tier captain builds. Like I'm really going to play a lot more of like, and maybe I fade the Horford one and I go like Smart and Klay Thompson and Wiggins and Draymond, because we haven't seen this series play out. I'm trying to be at the top of the leaderboard, and I'm trying to be up there with not as many chops, with still some really good teams. And I think overall, just trying to fade some of this ownership and build some unique lineups is really the key here on this slate.
Oh, I'm with you for sure. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty big deal, like who's in the captain, because I think it could even be like a 2 or 3 point margin where Draymond Green outscores Horford by 2 points. And all of a sudden that's huge in the captain slot. That could be the difference between first. And 1,500th, where you get a split of $1 million, or you get 25 bucks profit. Like, it's going to be a major deal who you play in the captain. And I think when I'm building my captain pool, I've kind of taken the big T approach, where I project guys. I'm not as aggressive as projecting players above their mark as much as Big T does, but like, I'll build like my set of projections, and I will automatically just go ahead and, let's say I'll have Horford for 40, and then I'll put Jaylen Brown for 35. Instead of Xing them out and like taking them out of my player pool in the captain, if I end with 2% Jaylen Brown captain, despite him being projected lower than Horford and stuff, I'll just roll with that. But I'm more of a 20 max player. I don't do 150 like the big dogs do, and I know you do sometimes too, right, Mangone? And you play 150.
I don't really
right?
do 150.
You're more the cash, yeah. You definitely.
I do between like 20 and 50. Sometimes I get to 100, but I don't really 150. I'm tough. Just trying. I really wanted to spend a lot of this summer like just getting better at MME, and I've been doing a lot more 20 max just because that's the max people can put in, right? So it's like it kind of acts like I am still in that kind of contest where I'm maxing out completely technically. So that's one reason I've liked doing that and kind of been approaching that a little more, is just to get better at it, right? I'm not saying I'm gonna burn money or anything like that, but it's one of those things where I'm just trying to improve on my play and just do it at a cheaper price tag. And I know it's something that I've always wanted to be better at 150, and I figured it's a good way to do it. And going through SaberSim, I've liked what I've seen so far, and just kind of still working through that and trying to figure out the kinks with it, trying to figure out some just different things that, can help give me an edge.
Oh yeah. The 20 max. I mean, that's the best contest by far. And I wish I could enter it for NASCAR and stuff, but like all these fucking restrictions piss me off. But I'll say this, that the $4 NBA, usual 20 max is definitely my favorite contest by far. Sometimes I just train it, even though I'm probably not the smartest thing to do. But I do love.
It's just, it's a tough day, and you just kind of, I've done it before in the past. And
I always play 20
not working, and there's an issue. I did it in golf once. It was just like I ran 50-man train and it all cashed, so that was fun. But it was very the opto can sometimes be annoying, or I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and so like I think the way to be different, because like it takes one move to get different in a 20 max. Like, people aren't going to be as aggressive. Like, you're not going to see like 2% of a guy who should never be owned, right? He's probably going to be less than 1%. Like, just the edges, like you can get different easier and stuff. And the 20 maxes, I just, it's a perfect medium for me. I can never go above 20 if I'm going to be making money, because for some reason my projections just aren't tournament oriented as much as they should be. And so like, when I'm trying to get better at is projecting these guys to more progressive output, like let's say, like I say, Horford's 40-point projection has probably been something where I'm like, oh, this could be something that makes him higher owned than the captain for me. But if I wanted to get really different, I could do that with, a guy like Jordan Poole off the bench. He'll probably clock in at like 25% in the utility. He probably won't get above 3-4% in the captain. And that could be a way to get different too, is if I projected him at like 33, 35, and all of a sudden I'm landing with like 20% captain, that's 10 times over the field almost. So I think if I'm carving out, like, I'm going to put it in my projections a little bit later, but it would definitely be Tatum, Curry, Horford, Draymond, and then maybe a miscellaneous guy like Jordan Poole, or it probably could be Wiggins or Smart even.
So here's a good question. Would you list Draymond as like your fourth highest projected guy, or are you saying like he's just going to be your fourth highest owned captain, you think?
Highest owned captain. He could definitely be my fourth highest owned guy. I mean, it kind of correlates in its own regard too. Like, if I like him in the captain, I'll probably like him a lot in the utility. So I know I definitely will have a lot of those main four guys, Tatum, Curry, Horford, and Draymond, and then it's deciding what to do after that. And that could be, how do you leverage those four players? Because those four players will probably be major chalk. Those guys will probably carry a lot of ownership. How can you leverage it? Well, you could go Otto Porter if, assuming he's playing, you go Otto Porter in some builds and make sure you fade Draymond in those type of of sets. And then if you're looking at Horford, maybe you play a lot of Grant Williams and hope for Horford to get in foul trouble if you're looking for a way to solo ship. But those four guys, I think I'll have a bunch in utility and captain.
All right, so let's make some adjustments to the projections here. We're going to make them in the util spot. They'll adjust for the captain as well. So Tatum, is it Tatum or Curry for you? Who's your number one? Who do you want to have as the highest projected guy on the slate here?
I think I got to go Tatum. I mean, Curry's been great, but I know it's on the road too. But I just think Tatum, he's going to be a guy who steps up here, and it's definitely marginal, but Tatum for me.
Okay, well, let's make it. I say right now we got it like 44.141. We got Curry 42.24. We're already going to get a lot of them. They're already going to be on the teams. Let's leave it how it is, and we can adjust those once we kind of run Saber to gain more ownership on guys if we need to. So here was going to be my suggestion. I know you like Al Horford here. I think he's a good play, but sounds like he's going to be one of the chalkier options. I was going to say, let's bump him down and then see how much he still pops at that point. What would you want to bump him from? Here he's 35.81. What's like a respectable number? Is it 33, 30? Like obviously at 34, he pops over Smart for sure. But even at 33 for the $600, he still might pop over. And that's why I was kind of suggesting that number.
Let's go ahead and throw him at 31, see where he lands at, because I think that's enough for a medium projection where he could honestly underperform there. And I think that's a good number there.
Yeah, and if we run it and he's not on any of the teams, then maybe we'll go back and put it at 33 and then see what it looks like. And the reason I want to do this, I think it's a good exercise to go through, is it seems like he's going to be very high owned on this slate. And I'm just curious, what's the reason? And sometimes it's just like the math of like where the price is. And it just might make sense. Like, and some people might say, oh, I just want to X him completely, but that might not be the right approach to go with. And that's why I wanted to kind of go through and talk about that a little bit. Klay Thompson, where is he a guy you want to put up higher? Do you want to put Marcus Smart a little lower? What do you want to do with those numbers there?
I always put Klay Thompson higher. It feels like, what is it? 30.47. So I'd want to bump him up a little bit. And then here's the thing too. He's at his lowest price point in what feels like forever. Like at 7,800 is incredibly low. It's the lowest he's been all playoffs. So I want to put him at 33.
Like, I'm down with that. So we'll put him at 33. I'm cool with that. Draymond's one you wanted to bump too, right? I'm down to bump Draymond. I think we both like him. We can agree on that. Want to put him at 32?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I think 32 solid. I don't like to make it like too aggressive where it's like, okay, clearly I'm just going to get like 80% of this one guy unless I have like a huge take on him. But and then I like to see it and make adjustments after we kind of went through it all. Is Robert Williams someone you want to go a little more down? I mean, I guess we went down on Horford. We could leave Williams where he's at. I'm fine with that. What's your kind of thoughts on Williams?
See, I'm fading completely. I think he's hurt. I genuinely think he is immobile. So like, I want to keep him where he is.
Let's bump him to 20 then. I think that's okay for now. And then see what happens. We can even go, let's even go 18. Let's be a little more aggressive just to see. Cause like, I get it. We're trying to predict what's going to happen, but at the same time, sometimes we're not going to like for sure be right about it. Right. Like, I mean, it's just, and if you're building 150 teams, let's say you are like, Xing a guy completely, it's a big stand to take. And like Big T's talked about this before on some of the shows. He said, hey, when he's building out I'm building out my lineups and like sometimes he just X's like, he'll have like, I don't know, like these 1K guys, like he'll have like 45% of a guy. And he's like, why do I have 45% when all I have to do is get like 20% and I can give 25% to other 1K guys and just take shots. So at lower ownership. So that's something obviously that we can look at when we get down here a little bit more. I do think this could be not a bad series for Grant Williams. And if you think Robert Williams happens to be hurt, I think Grant Williams could play a little bit more and get some decent runs. So I want to bump him up. I'm going to put him to 19. Are you okay with that at 4.8?
Oh, 100%. I'm definitely okay with that. Correlates with one another.
Cool. So let's bump that up. I think that's a good call there. And then Otto Porter, 4K. Gary Payne, I just don't know what to do with them right now because of the injury stuff. I'm just going to leave them where they're at, run some stuff and see what happens. Are there any 1K guys that you want to like mix in here like that we're forgetting? That Saber
Iguodala, get him at like 8 and then bump Gary Payton down to like 9 because I want to see how they do against one another with a 1 point difference because if Payton, I don't think he'll play as much if Iggy's in. So I think they could play the same amount. Okay, well,
let's put Iggy to 9. Here's another thing I want to ask you just because of what the projections have. What would you do with Bielitsa here? You don't like him, correct? 9.8. We want to bump him down.
So Kerr mentioned that he wanted to get Bielitsa into the series sooner, but I think he mentioned that because Otto Porter went down, he went with Kuminga and stuff. I think Bielitsa is back to being on the bench. He might have a role in this series, but I think you could project him at like 3. See if Saber really kind of wants to mix him in there at all. But I don't think he gets off the bench today.
Yeah, I want to bump him down. I just don't want to like him like slam in my lineup. So I'm going to put him down to like 4. I mean, if we get some, whatever, it's fine.
Yep.
Like, but I don't want him popping over Peyton and Iggy. I think those two are better plays. Maybe I end up being wrong because of the Peyton stuff. That could go down. Do you want to make it where I guess because Iggy's at 1K, he's at 9 too. So that'll probably pop him more, but let's see what happens. Anything else you want to bump up? Is it Wiggins you want to move up or Poole, Looney? Do you want to bump down at all? Anyone else?
So I kind of want to bump down Looney just a tad, just because Otto Porter's healthy. I think it
I'm
could
down.
make him a little more versatile. But that's it. I mean, like we don't have to get too specific here, but I think that would be something that I would do personally.
I
And I
bumped it down.
might
I'm
bump
not
Poole
dying to
down
play
just a
Looney.
tad.
I think he could play well, but like I'm also not trying to X him. Like I don't have any strong takes, so I'm fine with him.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest things. You don't have to X guys if you don't want them in your pool. You can just underproject them. And if they hit, that's fine. I mean, there's a reason why they hit the in the optimizer to begin with, and it's also a way to kind of go against your thoughts. I know it's not completely perfect, but sometimes I'm wrong a lot. I know I am. So when I get corrected by the optimizer, and all of a sudden I thought I had nobody, I had zero exposure to somebody, and it turns out I did. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, one more guy I want to bump. I want to bump Derek White, and the reason why I want to bump Derek White, I'm not going to go high. I'm going to put him to 22.
Okay.
1.5 bump, but the reason why I want to bump Derek White is they kind of talked with him a little bit. It was like during that last series, and they're like, it sounded like Derek White was like kind of like a little nervous to like kind of like step in and like add opinions because he's like the new guy in town, right? Yeah. And they were just like, dude, like this is your team too. Like we want your inputs. And then that's when he started kind of flourishing a little bit more. Yes, the Marcus Smart injury was part of it as well. But I think some of that coach speak and confidence kind of helped it out, especially like getting reassurance from the teammates saying like, hey, if you see something like speak up, we want your voice. You're part of this team too. And that's tough. Obviously, when you get traded mid-season, you're just trying to find a way to fit in. You're not trying to step on people's toes. And I think he's getting a lot more comfortable. So I want to give him a little bit of a bump. I think he really looked good last series. And I think the small ball lineups could fit really well during this series. Like I said, Robert Williams didn't look great last game. I think as the series goes on, you're going to see Derek White and Grant Williams lineups a lot more. You're going to see them gain more minutes throughout the series. Yes, it's only game one, so maybe they don't get as much as right now, but I want to be ahead of the curve on it, and it could happen in game one. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%. Like do it in game one. This is your chance to really make your own assumptions towards what the series is going to do, because the next game is going to be a lot of confirmation bias and even like recency bias for a lot of people too, where we just saw, I don't mean to go against it because I think Derek White, I really wanted to talk about him on the show because I don't personally know what I want to do with him yet. I have him listed in the fades, but that is something that I really battled with. And it was something where it was in my 1v1s of do I play him or do I not? But a guy like Derek White was 40% in game 7, despite being 17% in game 5, 27% in game 6. But because he had two good performances, all of a sudden he was 40% owned. And I think like you're going to see a lot of recency bias, and maybe even Derek White still has that recency bias in his own right here where he gets a little overowned. But I think that make your own assumptions. This is the time to do it. Game one. If you think something's going to happen, trust it. This is the one way to get different, especially when no one knows how this series is going to look exactly with the rotation. So like you said, game one, do it 100%.
Yeah, so I agree with you on I think you could see way too high ownership on White. Now I haven't gone through and done ownership. I'm just making hey, these are my thoughts on and these are your thoughts on just matchups and stuff. I'm not really diving that deep into the ownership stuff yet. Now, if I see Derek White coming in at 60%, yeah, I want to think about that a little bit. A bench dude, at 60%, what are we doing here? And he certainly could gain a lot of ownership for sure at 5.4K. So, but let's run it. I mean, we added some inputs. We put some of our mix on it. Obviously, it's a mix of you and me, right? It's not our own thoughts. It's a mix of both of us. So let's see what it does. We'll run. Let's run 150. Or not 150 is a lot. Let's do the 20 because you and I both like doing the 20. Do you ever mess with the min max salary? Do you ever make it where you don't fill it out zero? How do you kind of handle that on Showdown?
So on Showdown, I usually set it at 45, but I mean, I don't blame anyone if they want to get more aggressive, but 45, and I don't want to fill out the salary. I don't. I will do 49.9, but if you want to be even more aggressive, kind of looking for the solo shipper, set that thing all the way down to 49 and make sure you're leaving salary a lot. But you're trying to hit a home run. I get it. Sometimes I like a little safety net.
Yeah, I'm down to keep it with where it's at. I did recently. I did it to 49,500, and it was one of my worst slates. Now I think there are other reasons why, but it was kind of frustrating. So I was well, I want to run it with this. And what I might do today is I might run both and then see what the exposures are and see what some of the differences are. That's something I'll look at later on when I kind of dive in deeper to it. So yeah, let me run this now and then let's just see what we get. So we're running 20 lineups, 500-man pool. And what happens is this is SaberSim over here at Rumpier Sports. We have a partnership with them. And this is going to be running, simulations of 500 teams based on our projections, based on, everything that we kind of put our inputs into and their inputs as well. So we got our stuff up. let's see what we got here. And Draymond captain is our number one captain right now, Rubio. So let me scroll over and gosh, hang on. I gotta scroll down. This is because we have to zoom in for you guys, it makes it a little more difficult for me. So let's scroll over here and see what our overall setup is. Hang on. So Draymond is our number one captain. Number one, we are getting him at, let's see, 25%, it looks like, or is that Clay? That is Draymond 35% at the captain spot. Clay 25%, Tatum 20%, Jaylen Brown 10%, Curry 5%, and Poole 5%. So that's in the captain spot. Not totally surprising that Horford's not in there because we bumped him down. I'm curious to see what he is in the util spot. Then we can obviously make readjustments and see what it does. Rubio, what's some of your thoughts on these exposures we got so far?
Yeah, I kind of dig them. I mean, this is kind of where we thought it would be, and I don't mind Curry being a little lower too. I think these guys get into the 50s, like Tatum and Curry, but that's just fine. And we just saw, like I said earlier, the Celtics ended up basically kind of shutting down Jimmy Butler, other than game 6, I understand, and shutting down KD in the first series too. Like, I don't mind being underweight on Steph Curry captain at all. So I kind of support that. And I think, like, if you think Curry struggles, Klay Thompson being there as well as one of the higher guys in the captain slot makes a ton of sense too. So I'm kind of comfortable where we have these at, especially Tatum at 20%. Maybe I'd bump that up, but otherwise happy.
Yeah, and if you want, and I'm not going to scroll over, it's very easy. If you're in SaberSim, you click on this, and if you don't like where Curry's at, right? Let's say his projection's 42, bump it to 44, and then you see, oh, now I'm getting more than 5%. Now it might move up to 15%. And it takes from the 500-man pool that we have created and bumps that up. Obviously, there's Curry in some of those pools, right? But when you kind of bump the projection, then it's going to put him in there more. So that's kind of how SaberSim works. That's just some of it. We're going to go in and look at the utility spot here shortly. But before we do that, guys, please like and subscribe to this video. We got 120 of you watching and only 37 likes. So please hit that like on the video. It helps us out a ton over here at Run Pure Sports. Subscribe to the channel. That way you can get notified when we go live with all of our content. Like I said, we got Big T, JSU, 3 o'clock. They're doing the premium show for NBA. Then we got 4:45. We got the MLB Swing for the Fences show on this YouTube channel. That'll be for free here. So if you subscribe, you'll get notified when it goes live at 4:45 Eastern. 6 o'clock, we got the Final Countdown show. And then 9 o'clock on here and the Mayo Media Network, we got the Round 2 PGA Showdown. So you do not want to miss out on all the content over here at Run Pure Sports. Also want to mention the new codes that we got going on right now, or not new codes, some of the old codes. If you haven't signed up at Run Pure Sports, we got the code GETBETS. That'll get you the bet side for free for an entire month. So if you are signing up in a new member here and you want to get the bet side, use that for your DFS inputs or make some bets. Use that code GETBETS. That'll get you a free first month. And also, if you haven't done some NBA best ball yet, what are you doing? Go to Underdog right now. Sign up, use that code RunPure, get you a $100 deposit bonus. So if you are in the best ball streets, great time to go over there and use that code if you have not. Rubio, let's look at the utils. I'm curious to see if Al Horford pops in here now. So let's give that a look here. And he's still on here, Rubio, at 40%, which is a pretty good amount. So I think that's really interesting. And I think my biggest takeaway from the show so far is, if I was considering Xing out Al Horford, I'm not going to. I'm not going to X him out. And I don't think I'm going to X out a lot of guys on this slate. I don't have like these strong takes of guys I just need to X for sure. But what's your kind of thoughts on seeing 40% Al Horford? When we moved him down from like, I think he was like at like 35 or 36. We moved him down all the way to 31.
Yeah, I mean, he's still going to be chalky for us too. That's wild. I think that just shows that I think this is a price point that is a little bit underpriced, and I don't mean to like say that, because I think a lot of these guys on this final slate are a bit underpriced. Like we have Steph Curry at like just 10.2, or Jason Tatum at 10.6. Like Jaylen Brown's like 9K too. So these guys feel like 1K off the mark than what they normally have been. So it's like not surprising to see Al Horford jam in a lot of builds, but I think he also is the safest. Like Klay Thompson relies a lot on shooting. Draymond Green has had his fair share of struggles, and Wiggins is a guy who could get hurt by Otto Porter being back, but he's been around that mark the whole time. So I think Al Horford's been incredibly consistent and has also flashed some upside. Like I think, even projecting him at 31, he's still in like that mean of averages. Like we have Wiggins, Draymond, Klay, and Marcus Smart all projected around him within just a couple points. And we even bumped Horford and the other guys, Horford down and the other guys up. So I think this just goes to show that Horford's going to be mad chalk, but that's because he's a great play.
Yeah, and so some of the other ownerships that stick out, like Curry, Tatum, we got a bunch of them, obviously. Wiggins still in there. We didn't even touch him, and he's at 60%. We didn't go up or down. So that was interesting. Draymond popped at 50%. We have a lot of Draymond. We definitely gave him a pretty aggressive bump. Jalen's still popping in there. Clay got a bump in there. But these cheaper guys, this is where it gets interesting. Iguodala, we got 40% off. So I thought that was interesting. One thing you can do on Saber is you can click this icon here, and it shows you what teams Iguodala is on, right, of our 20. So he's on Captain Tatum, Captain Clay, Captain Brown, Captain Draymond, Captain Curry, Captain Jaylen Brown, Captain Klay Thompson. So the reason why I wanted to click on this is I thought he'd be on mostly like the Tatum ones, right? And maybe like the Curry ones. And I know we have 40%, so that's like a good amount, but that's interesting to like see like how it can play out there. Like for instance, like let's say that you play like a really cheap like 1K guy that's like just going to be virtually unknown. Like let's say you think Moses Moody somehow is going to get run in the rotation. Let's just say you think it's going to be him. I think it's smart to click on that like Zoom thing just to see what teams he's on, because if I played like a really low owned guy that's like a 1K guy that's going to be like single digit owned, I probably still want him with my Captain Tatums and Captain Currys. I don't need him on the Captain Draymond team. Like, let's be real. That's trying to hit too many legs of like the parlay, right? It's just a little egregious. Now, if it's someone that's going to leverage like that high-end captain, right, then that can make some sense. Not saying Moody's going to leverage Curry, but you get what I'm saying. Obviously, every situation is different. Every basketball team is different. The Warriors are not the same as the Dallas Mavericks because Luka is a whole different animal. Giannis is way different than Tatum with the role that he has on his team. So all those things are what matter. But that's kind of some just ways you can like look at your teams and make sure you have like the proper teams in there. And if you don't like a team, you hit that check mark, check it on or check it off, however you want. Rubio, a couple other things that stick out to me besides Iguodala at 40%. I do want to get your thoughts on that, but Marcus Smart, we didn't touch at 30%. He's someone I kind of might want to get a little more aggressive on just because I think he might be under-owned after some of our conversations. And Derek White, I gave him a bump, Rubio, and he's only on 20%. Now, I don't know if that's because we gave other higher bumps to some of these mid-tier guys, and that's why that happened more, but I did find that interesting seeing him a lot lower. And then Grant Williams, it did feel like we gave him a decent bump. He's barely on our teams. We either have to bump him up even more to get him, or maybe we just leave it alone. And then Gary Payton at 10%, he still popped on teams, but he's not on all of them for sure. So that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this shows more is that we're going to it's going to force a lot of 1K builds type. Like we didn't even mention Gary Payton, who's also still in our player pool, and I don't know if Bielitsa got any utility ownership too. But like it's showing that over like 55 or 60% of the builds have at least like a 1K, 1.6K dude. And I think, personally that's kind of like one of those eye openers. And it's surprising that Tatum and Curry didn't have all the Iguodala builds, and when they were in the captain slot. But I think that kind of goes to show too that we only have Tatum projected like 10 points off those guys. I think Tatum could definitely be a guy who gets like 50, 55 plus. And I'm going to respect the Celtics defense completely. And I think I'm going to cater more towards like a Klay Thompson, a Draymond Green, and in the captain slot over a Curry, because I think they can limit Curry better than Tatum can be limited by the Warriors. So I do like the fact that this kind of opening our eyes where maybe the 1K build is what is going to be the preferred way. And maybe that opens the door to more Tatum captain builds or more Curry captain builds, depending on which way you sway. And I think like we have a lot of Jordan Poole. Like we have 35% Jordan Poole. That's surprising to me as well. I know he's underpriced.
So I think I know why we have 35%. And this is just my assumption, Rubio. Let's talk about it. I bet you the Jordan Poole teams are a lot of captain mid-tier teams because I think we bumped a lot of the mid-tier a ton. And I think that's what led to Jordan Poole on a lot of teams. So let's look. So if I zoom in on these, we got already on a Tatum captain. So that's one of like the top guys. So we have 7 teams. So 1 out of 7 is on him. Klay Thompson captain, Tatum captain again, which is surprising. And it's Tatum with like definitely more of like a balanced build. So actually what you are seeing here, Rubio, is you're seeing Tatum at the captain spot with all those balanced guys we bumped, right? Clay, White, Draymond Green, which kind of is really interesting to see because I wasn't expecting that when we first clicked on this. Now we got Poole with Jaylen Brown. We got Klay Thompson with Poole, another mid-tier one, Draymond with Poole. So 2 of the 7 had Tatum there. But I think that's really interesting because I thought most of them would be the mid-tier captain with Poole. What's some of your thoughts on these Poole teams?
Honestly, they look pretty nice. I don't think I would pair Poole with Curry, which I kind of see a little bit there. But I understand.
I like this team, Rubio. This one that goes Tatum, Clay, Wiggins, White, Green, and Poole. I thought this was like a really sweet team. I noticed here.
And it kind of has like, I don't think Poole gets a ton of ownership. I know he was chalked the last time he was like 6'4". It was against the Mavericks. But this, like I said before, all these guys feel underpriced to begin with. I don't think Jordan Poole gets a lot of ownership. You mentioned that Derek White only landed in 20% of our builds. And we also have Tatum in the captain slot too, where I think it all correlates pretty nicely. And you're also fading a chalk out Horford. Like that's such a great way to be to be different. But I mean, it's not the most optimal build, I think, in either of our eyes. But if you're looking for a build that correlates across the board and is pretty unique, I mean, that's the way to think about it. And I think we look at the salary, at least 500 in salary too. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to mention from the chat. So, Josh, I know you talked about, you said you like Gary Payton Jr. over Iggy. I'm not saying you're wrong or right. I'm just saying the information we did just get recently was Gary Payton Jr. Might not enter the rotation. So you could get a 0 from him today. You could get a 0 from Iggy too. Keep that in mind. But just pass on that information because it's pretty new info. We got it during the show. I guess you said they went all through practice the last couple of days through full practices, but just want to mention that it's, obviously that could change your opinion. I'm not sure. Other thing, Mikhail, he says in the chat, not playing Poole tonight. Mikhail, his name could be Rubio Dimes. His name could be Travis Mangone. It could be anyone in there. It could be Big T. I just wanted to go through because Poole wasn't a guy that we were like excited to play. If you looked at this segment before, when we were kind of going through and building stuff out, we didn't touch his projection, but we still got 35%. And the whole point of it was to go through and look and see what are we getting with our teams, right? Like what do the Poole teams look like? That's the whole point of it. I do like, obviously, like we like to watch the NBA. And once we see some of this series, it's easier to provide some takes, but we're trying to win $1 million. There's a lot more game theory involved on these slates, especially when we don't know what's going to happen. Like if you tell me everyone thinks that, Al Horford is like the best play on the slate and going to be very high owned. Well, like we haven't seen these two teams play in this kind of environment yet. Like I'm not that sure of it. Now, if Robert Williams happens to be out, then yeah, there's good reason why Al Horford is gaining more ownership. But the point we're getting at here is game theory matters. And when we're seeing a guy like Jordan Poole, someone we didn't think about, and the optimizer is pushing him in there, curious kind of why. And one thing you can do is if you don't like Jordan Poole, instead of just saying, I don't want to play him, just bump him down. So like Rubio, we can actually do this right here, right now. So let's say that Jordan Poole is a guy that we're not as interested in. We didn't talk about him a lot, so maybe we're not as excited about him. Let's see what happens when we move Jordan Poole down. He's 27.61. What's a good number to put him to and then see what the ownership changes to?
Let's slap him at 23.5. I think that's a fair medium.
All right. And that's a pretty big bump. 23.5 is a lot. Let's see what it does. We still get, let's see how much we got here. That's still a good amount, it looks like. And because I'm zoomed in, it's harder to see it, but let me scroll up and find it. We got him at, that's 15%, right? Yeah. So he went from 40% to 15 with a 4.5 bump down, which is a pretty, I don't know, Rubio, that's a pretty significant bump. And he's still showing up on teams, and you don't think he's going to be that owned anyways. It seems like we could be getting Poole at like 20 to 25%. We would just be a little underweight, and we could move that back up. Like if I moved it to, let's say I moved it to 24.5, added another point. Let's see how much it shoots up. Now it shoots up to 20% and added a 5%, and that would get us more even with the field. So ultimately, we gave Jordan Poole a projection bump down that was kind of significant, and he's still on these teams here.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, sorry, I was doing my soccer lineups here. 15% Jordan Poole is showing up, 20% Jordan Poole. I mean, that's still pretty even to the field. I think we've seen him go off in these playoffs. Like he is a stud at times, and sometimes he's hit or miss. But he's a guy who can get you 36 on a game where he just gets hot in the second quarter or third quarter. And all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, this dude's optimal. I've seen it happen time and time again with him. I was fading him at the beginning of the playoffs, and then I finally got on board and I was happy with it. Like this dude's a stud. He's an offensive scorer. And I think 6.4 is your first chance to maybe get him at completely lower ownership. Maybe if he has a good game today, you won't see him at lower ownership the entire series moving forward.
Yeah. And to keep in mind, when you move Poole down like we did, we gained 10% Iguodala, right? We also gained a little bit of Wiggins, I think, in Draymond, like 5% Draymond. I think we gained a little more Wiggins, and then we gained a little more Horford back. And it's good to see when you do make these adjustments, what changes, and then you see what you gain more of and what you gain less of. And that helps you kind of figure out what you're doing here with some of your setups. Rubio, any final thoughts here for the people? Any other things you want to talk about here that I haven't touched on? And you want to tell the people too, also some of the Showdown stuff that you're doing for the people today.
Yeah, I mean, every day we got the playbook up and running. We got Kurt's Boston bias at the bottom of the sheet now. Instead of a slate overview, we're going to have like a little unique touch on what Kurt thinks too. He's been helping me out with the Showdown playbooks all season. So we'll have a nice little spot for that Boston Celtics fan there. And basically every day, maybe I'll pop on some shows too. If you ever need someone, if you ever need a friend, Mangone, you got me to call on. Mangone and Friends needs me, and yeah, it needs a friend, I guess. I know you have great shows every day, so it's nice to be a part of this. Thank you for giving me the call up.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get you on for sure. I mean, I'll be doing probably every day there is NBA as we kind of close it out. I'll probably have something we'll talk about with the NBA stuff. We talked with Tyler the other day. So if you want to check out some takes on what I think for the series, what Tyler thinks, some bets as well, check that out on the morning show from Tuesday. And then Rubio, we can't let you get out of here without giving away who's winning the whole thing and how many games. Is it a 7-game series? I'm a Celtics fan, so I'm going to be a little biased. I'm taking the Celtics. I'm taking them in 7. I think it's going to be a really fun series. I think we're going to get rewarded for watching some really bad basketball throughout the playoffs. It wasn't not the best playoffs so far, but I think we get rewarded here, Rubio. I got Celtics in 7. How about you?
I want this over in 6. I'm going to take the man. I keep referring to what the Celtics did to the Bucks because that was very impressive, regardless if the Bucks had Middleton or not. I want to say Celtics in 6. Hopefully it's in 6 because I won't be able to play Game 7 of the series. I'll be overseas. So it'll be Celtics in 6. I hate to say it. It grosses me out.
I want to say in 6. My problem is I think the Warriors are just a really tough team to close out. Like, I think they're going to be hard to like put away. So that's why I picked 7. That's why I kind of ended up coming to that conclusion. Yeah, Rubio, I'm going to be in Aruba next week. So I'm not going to be able to play a lot. Like, it's going to be fun to be there, but I'm not going to be able to be playing Showdown. Like, I'm pretty sure like Monday through I think I leave on Monday and then I come back on Friday. So the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I wouldn't be able to play. And when I'm there, if anyone knows and can give me the answer, I think DC knows this because I think he went away to one of those places.
You can reserve.
Yeah. I can reserve and play. Can I actually edit there as well?
Oh, 100%. That's what I did with the college football playoff in London.
Oh, so in London you were able to do that. Okay, that's important.
Yeah, you were still able to play regular DFS, but you can't do college sports in London. At least when I emailed DK. But so I reserved beforehand and was able to edit. Okay,
well, not that. Like I said, that's really good to know. And the reason why I wanted to ask that and just get the answer, and I forgot you went to London, is because like I know you can do that with other states, right? Like if I go to Vegas, I can reserve, but like the U.S. is a little different than being like out of the country. So the fact that you did that in London, Rubio, that gives me some encouragement. Now I can play the golf coming up this next week. So I was worried. I didn't know if reserving was giving me a good or bad idea. I was going to make sure when I made my golf teams, there was something good in there and not some really bad dummy teams. So I'm going to do my best to get some teams in and play for sure. Cause I don't want to miss out on Showdown for the NBA finals. I will be watching those games for sure and cannot wait for that. But that's going to wrap it up for us guys. Please like, subscribe to this video. That helps us out a ton. One more thing. Don't miss out. 3 p.m. Sign up at Rumpier Sports. You get the Showdown show with Big T and JSU. They'll be breaking everything down. So you do not want to miss out on that. If you like this show, you're going to love that one. So be sure to check that out. But that will wrap it up for us. Thanks a lot for joining. For me, Mangone and Rubio, we will see you guys later.